Do we have a treat for you? A significant announcement coming up in just a little bit as we bring you to InGoal Radio, the podcast presented by The Hockey Shop, source for sports Surrey, thehockeyshop.com. Darren Millard along with Kevin Woodley. Our feature interview this week, former National Hockey Leaguer Mike Condon. And if you remember the first time that he came by the InGoal Radio podcast, he just shares everything. Like, we do a deep dive, and he does not disappoint. He follows that up with all kinds of news regarding his career, his comeback attempt, and what he's doing right now. But Woody, let's start with the significant news and who you touch base with.
Yeah, exciting guest announcement. I can't say whether it's for this next episode or 2 episodes from now, but got a nice note from Henrik Lundqvist about joining the show. Obviously, a guest somebody that he's been really good to us over the years. Every time he came through town, so generous with his time, always up for talking goaltending. And now that he's retired, somebody we've been kind of chasing and wanted to get on the show, and heading into his big retirement number ceremony at Madison Square Garden. He sent us a note, and we're just going to firm up a time here in the next little bit, but looks like we will have Henrik Lundqvist as a featured guest on the InGoal Radio podcast, which is kind of a big deal. I'm kind of excited. Just a little bit.
What angle do you think you're going to take with him?
It's a good question. I hadn't thought about that because we've touched on so many things over the years. I want to just goalie geek out a little bit. As there's been a lot written, and there's been a lot. He's sort of told the story of how he got to here in terms of the heart condition and the surgery that led to him retiring early. I'm not sure we'll spend a lot of time there. I want to talk more about playing career. I want to talk about his adjustment coming to North America. I want to talk about equipment. And some of the things that, frankly, he revolutionized, an innovator in the equipment industry, things that will forever be tied to him in terms of developments in equipment. I want to talk about technique. I want to talk about Benoit Lair. I want to talk about just goalie geek stuff. And Henrik's always been a guy who has been good about engaging in those conversations, because I think as stylish as he is, and all those, 50 most beautiful people lists he made on international magazine covers, he's still at heart, like many of us, a goalie geek. So hopefully we'll get to geek out a little bit with Henrik Lundqvist. As you can tell, I'm just a little bit excited about it, because every time we did in person here in Vancouver when the Rangers were coming through town, he engaged on that level, whether it was showing us why he had that custom sort of squared off grip on his stick, or some of the different things, why he wore gloves under his gloves, the unique, as he was in the early stages. I'll remember when the Odin pad was coming out and he was wearing it before anybody really knew it was coming out, having conversations about that, sort of hush-hush in secret about these new developments in goaltending gear that we've now seen sort of, in a lot of ways, revolutionize that side of the industry with Bauer. So just excited to not just revisit some of it, but hopefully move some of it forward a little bit with some behind-the-scenes stories.
What did he wear before Bauer?
There's a story there in itself, and one we've talked about on social media. He was a TPS guy. And so this is a story I don't know we'll get into, because I'm not even sure he's aware of it. But the company that bought TPS in Sherwood had a choice to make. They were only going to carry forward one line, and Henrik Lundqvist was the poster child of the TPS line, and Martin Brodeur was the poster child of the Sherwood line. And they actually, part of that group of that, I guess it was more like an investment company that bought it, engaged us at one point about which decision to make, and unfortunately didn't listen. We saw Henrik as sort of the future of goaltending, and as much as Marty was still huge at the time, the way he played wasn't necessarily the way the game was trending. And that wasn't a criticism of him. It's just trying to look forward as an equipment company. They chose Brodeur, went with the Sherwood line. TPS died. Lundqvist went over to Bauer, and the rest is history. But it kind of makes you wonder, do we still have a TPS in the hockey industry if they'd gone the other way?
Was Hank one of the first, and maybe Curtis Joseph would be in this category, of goaltenders who didn't close their gloves when they caught the puck?
Yeah, it's funny. I was watching over some old footage, and he used to. So that's the other part. I know at one point he had a practice glove that was so stiff, and this is how it developed, that sort of pancake flat, big presentation glove where you'd almost have to catch it in the pocket and then turn it up like a like a server holding a platter to sort of keep it in the pocket because it really didn't close for the longest time. That was trying a practice glove very stiff and just loving how big and open it presented. And then over the years, he kind of made adjustments to it. So it did close when he first came over. The old TPS glove closed. The Bauer glove started to close towards the end, but you're right. For a long time there, it didn't really close. And so there, again, there's another one of those stories that, I've heard it from the equipment manufacturer side. I think I've talked about it at least once or twice a little bit with Henrik when he came through town, but we've never really gotten to dig into. So there's a bunch of them. And I think as much as we want to talk about retirement and what he's doing next and what this night, the emotions of this night coming up will be, I think we want to get into some of those things, unlock some of those mysteries that came with such an incredible career.
You could play True or False with Henrik Lundqvist. Get Hutch to put in some theme music, full game show mode. Be awesome. I've given you a couple. Send us some news, some tidbits on your end of it. You know that Henrik Lundqvist has reached out, and we'll chat about his number going to the rafters at MSG in a couple of weeks, and maybe you can give us a little question or two to talk to him about. But I always think Henrik Lundqvist, and this may sound strange, but Henrik Lundqvist and the Hockey Shop, source for Sports Surrey, hockeyshop.com, kind of they're one and the same to me. I can't think about the Hockey Shop without thinking Lundqvist without thinking about the Hockey Shop, because every time those Lundqvist sticks would come in, I get all excited, and there's a connection there that's embedded in my mind.
Well, also remember when we had the Hockey Shop used to have obviously, and hopefully will once we get sort of through COVID times here in the pandemic, but the big festival that we used to go to, right. I remember Bauer bringing one of Lundqvist's stick and how big an attraction that was for people to sort of see how unique that grip was. And of course, we've got an article since where Henrik sort of explained the mechanics of how he held that stick and why he liked it and the way he was blocker presented and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I hear you on that one. Right now, it's a different stick that is our focus point for the Hockey Shop and the hockeyshop.com. We told you about it last week. The inventory has come in, folks. And as much as I teased a whole bunch of different curves and different paddle lengths, predominantly, we're dealing with the Jonathan Quick curve. That's what Cam's got most of. But in all kinds of different models, Warrior, V1, there's like a Senior Plus, Pro Plus. Cam's got them all. Literally over 400 Warrior V1 sticks in stock, all 30% off. A special deal that Cam was able to get at the Hockey Shop and the hockeyshop.com, and savings that he will be passing along to you. We're going to put it in the show notes on the website, InGoalMag.com. We're going to show the video we did reviewing the Warrior V1 last year, just to sort of let people get familiar with the different models, so you can check that out, make sure you're getting the one you want. But whichever one you choose, you will find it on sale. Huge discounts, 30% off the Hockey Shop or the hockeyshop.com. We've got some exciting gear segments. I know we haven't had a live gear segment here in the show in a little while. We've been chipping away with Cam behind the scenes on some bigger picture projects, looking at things like glove breaks, how to fit a stick, how to fit pads. The glove breaks, CCM, 600, 590, 580, the common vernacular. We went over that with Cam, and then we went through every model from other manufacturers that fits each one. So if you're ever like, yeah, I'm a 590 guy, but I'm now moving over to a Vaughn glove. Well, here's the models that fit and feel the same way. So we've got videos like that coming up in the next couple of weeks. We've been kind of using this time to highlight the sales and behind the scenes, building out these videos in a little more detail. And we'll be excited to start unveiling those soon. But in the meantime, make sure you check out the hockeyshop.com for massive savings on the Warrior V1 stick line. Like I said, Cam's got over 400. I saw the back room. It's just an endless sea. Remember we showed you just how many CCM Pro return sticks were back there? And there's still a bunch of those too on sale. But now it is like twice that amount. All Warrior V1, one of the more popular lines in the National Hockey League. There's a reason for that, and you can get it on sale now, 30% off, thehockeyshop.com.
And if you have any questions, just give Cam a call, and he'll walk you through it. He would love to be able to chat with you and impart his expertise on what you're looking for, what price point you're looking for, what pattern you're looking for, and that is the real advantage. Inventory and expertise of the Hockey Shop, a source for sports Surrey, thehockeyshop.com. Now, I want to get into some news that has happened in the last little bit before we get into Mike Condon. And let's start with Marc-Andre Fleury and his victorious return to Vegas, wins 2-1. I happened to be in the building, lucky enough on that regard. And there was so much representation for Marc-Andre Fleury, the face of the franchise. He wins. He gets the tribute. It was all wonderful, but there was one moment, and it was in the pregame warmup where Robin Lehner, his former partner, is stretching on the red line, and Flower comes sliding over, and they have a big hug, and they high five, and then they spend maybe 2 minutes chatting and hooking up. It was so neat to see a former tandem get together like that, and put aside any type of animosity. Like in the 80s, there was animosity between partners. That was cool last night to see a couple of guys get together and catch up, and knowing that they were great teammates.
Yeah, and it's probably, I'm guessing for you, not a surprise, but probably for a lot of people who always wondered about that relationship and, the challenges that may have come with having two such great goaltenders in Vegas. We always heard how they were always supportive of each other, and that was probably just a nice indication to the rest of the world just how good things were between the two, as much as both probably would have wanted to play more at various times over the past couple of years. Two of the great goalies in the league and two of the great people in the league.
Now you get into the game, and after the tribute, I don't know how he played. I don't. It was a wonderful moment inside the rink, and the connection between the fans and Marc-Andre that belies so many legends and their cities, goes above and beyond that. He must have had emotion. Like, it was lucky he had a mask on. Let's just say that.
Well, I saw some stuff. I mean, I did see some stuff on social. I wasn't able to watch the whole thing in person. I had a little family movie night. Comes with having two daughters. And my game, of course, was canceled thanks to the Vancouver Canucks not playing at home these days. But I wasn't able to tune in. But I saw some stuff on social that people said that it looked like there were tears underneath that mask from some of the video that we saw afterwards during that tribute. And again, like, I don't know how these guys compartmentalize that to go from and acknowledging and embracing the emotion of a moment like that. Like, he didn't seem to hide from it. He acknowledged the fans and still be able to separate yourself from it when the puck drops and go back to playing. I mean, I'm a mental midget. I wouldn't be able to do any of that. I guess that's why he's got 502 wins and counting in the National Hockey League, eh?
It didn't end up being like your vintage goalie duel. Both goalies were great, but it was definitely not a track meet by any means, but a cool moment. And I know Vegas is happy that they can kind of turn the page and move on. And I'm sure Marc-Andre is pleased that he doesn't have that hanging over for him, and they can get back on the winning track. Now, a story of a different kind is the challenges between a coach and a goaltender. And for the most part, it goes pretty good, and it's kept behind the scenes. But in Edmonton, Dave Tippett had some comments about Mikko Koskinen. Koskinen didn't like it and came back with his own interpretation of it. How did you read what went down between the coach and the goalie?
Well, okay, so two things. One, Marc-Andre Fleury. Vegas may be happy that they don't have Marc-Andre Fleury's return hanging over them anymore, and it's done and out of the way. But I'm not sure. Like, there's going to be a lot of Marc-Andre Fleury discussion now with Chicago pretty much out of the playoffs. Like, and Edmonton is a place where his name is already being bandied about. So I'm not sure that he gets to just sail off into the sunset of the rest of his season. There's going to be a lot of speculation around Flower from now till the end of it. And Edmonton and then Colorado are the two primary spots that we're already hearing his name. As far as what happened with Tippett and Koskinen, like, I think in Tippett's case, it's the emotions of the postgame. And I think his strongest comments, if you really go watch the entire thing, his strongest comments were about the first goal. Like, I don't think he killed Mikko for his entire performance.
No.
But he was very upset and emotional about the first goal. And first goals have been a problem for this team. And it was based off a turnover behind the net. And if you go on, he called it a mistake. And I think if you really go look at the play, the mistake was going out to play the puck. It died in the trapezoid and never got to him. I guess the read is a mistake because the puck, he went out and got a puck that he couldn't play. But I would think that, especially as much as they encourage Mike Smith to go out and play pucks, that for the most part, that's something they want their goaltenders doing. And whether it was a bounce or a judgment, the rim just never made its way to him. And so, bit of a tough break there, but he gets stranded in no man's land and he gives up that goal. And I think that's the one that Dave Tippett was most emotional and critical about. I don't know that he ever, listening back to the whole presser, because they're all online now, I don't know that he killed him beyond that. Like, I don't know that he attacked him beyond that. So that's sort of how I looked at that. Now, the interesting part was Mikko reacting and saying that, hey, listen, like he owned needing to be better. I think he'd given up, an average of 4 a game over his previous 6 starts, but he also pointed out they'd only scored 1 goal for him in 6 of his past 7. And so people interpreted that as going back at the coach. But again, the context of what you see on social media, which is just that quote about them not scoring, I didn't say I sought it out, but I saw on my Twitter feed a Finnish person who took the entire, because the interview Koskinen did was with a Finnish media outlet. I actually know Tommy, the reporter, quite well. He used to be based in Vancouver, and he is an absolute beauty. But somebody took Koskinen's quotes out of the Finnish publication and translated them in their entirety, and they were nowhere near as pointed as the snippet made it out to be. He owned his performance. He talked about wanting to be better. And even the context of the criticism of Tippett, even though he said nobody wants to be thrown under the bus, there was still a lot more sort of caveats granted before he made that statement. It wasn't as direct and pointed as pulling that one snippet or those 2 snippets out and putting them on social media made it out to be. So that doesn't solve the problem. There's a problem. I'm not sure it's between as much between the goalie and the coach as a lot of people would like it to make. The problem is the team's not winning and the goaltending hasn't been great. The team hasn't been great. They're scoring well below their expected goals. They're still a mediocre at best defensive team that requires, frankly, top 10 goaltending on most nights to have a chance. And Mikko hasn't delivered it, especially of late. The number I pointed to when I looked at Clearsight Analytics, the one that really hurts him and his performance this year is the low percentage goals, the low quality shots that end up in the back of the net. And there's been 16 so far this season, 7 in this stretch we're talking about directly, and that's the most in the NHL, and that's a problem. They tend to jump out, right? We know what a bad goal, it's more than just narratives. We know what a bad goal does to a bench, and there's been too many of them from him this season. Now, solutions, to me, the easiest one is obvious. A lot of people want to call out Stuart Skinner, and I get that. We had him on the podcast last week. He's been better in a small sample than Mikko has this season overall. But the easiest solution is Mike Smith coming back and being healthy and getting back to Mike Smith. I don't know that there are a lot of other options outside of Marc-Andre Fleury and the ransom he'll command, assuming he would even go, given his family being settled in Chicago now. There aren't a lot of other options for Edmonton that are necessarily upgrades into that top 10 level that you need based on the rest of your team. And Mike Smith last year played in that top 10 level for this team. So to me, him coming back and being healthy is 100% their best solution here.
So I was thinking Jack Campbell in the example of Jack Campbell, where you take somebody that's not playing a ton with that organization and you see something and you put him in. Like what's happened in that situation with Toronto. It's taken some time for that to occur, but he did step in when Toronto had a need and produced results. Do you see Edmonton taking a chance on that if they can't get a superstar? Because I don't. I don't see the reaction being beneficial. I don't see it happening again in those types of results. So I'm with you. I either see them getting a bona fide starter and paying the ransom, or sticking with what they have.
You could certainly go fishing for, look at Charlie Lindgren. Look at the season that he had with St. Louis. Now he's back in the minor leagues in the American Hockey League. And I think he still leads the NHL in save percentage during his run with St. Louis. But when Charlie Lindgren was in St. Louis, much like Jack Campbell in that last season with the Leafs, he came into an environment that was pretty good for goaltenders, right? Like Toronto, even more so than St. Louis, like a pretty good, stout defensive environment. And he played well, don't get me wrong. But what you need if you're coming into Edmonton is somebody who can give you top 10 results behind a team that's in the bottom half of the league defensively. Like, it's a bigger ask in Edmonton. And I'm sure there is somebody out there. Look at what Zach Fucale's doing in Washington right now. We're going to get to his story. He's only got 2 starts, but like there is somebody out there that's caught in between the AHL and the NHL that might be an upgrade for the Edmonton Oilers. Maybe it's Stuart Skinner, who's in the AHL right now just because Mike Smith's healthy and has a 916 when he's with the Oilers. Maybe it's somebody else, but there's a lot of maybes in that equation. And I think the most certain answer, again, predicated on him staying healthy as he heads towards his 40th birthday, is that Mike Smith has given you that goaltending. He did it just last season. And so a healthy Mike Smith is, again, to me, your easiest answer to this problem. But whether you can count on or get a healthy Mike Smith for the rest of the season remains, I guess that's just as big a maybe as some of the other questions we're asking.
Tell me about what's happening with Zach Fucale.
Well, I mean, a little bit of hard luck at the end last night, but I mean, a little bit of hard luck during the game. Pitches the shutout after all those years to finally make the NHL earlier this season. And we talked to him a little bit. He's been a guest of the podcast. You know, we're massive fans of his. And we saw when he signed in Washington some things in his game that had changed that really seemed to fit the teaching there. And we saw an opportunity that this might be the chance he would get to finally show he can play at the highest level. And it's kind of panned out that way. But again, because of their depth chart, only in small samples. So he pitches a shutout in his first start. Last night against the Minnesota Wild, I looked at the box score and I'm like, oh, he finally gave up a goal. He set a record before he did for the longest scoreless goaltending performance to begin an NHL career. As long as he waited to start his NHL career, he broke the record set by Matt Hackett for the longest shutout streak to begin that NHL career, which is impressive. He's in the record books forever. Nobody can take him away from him. Then I checked because I was checking the box score, right? Like I told you, I couldn't watch hockey last night, but I was checking because I'm on Zach Fucale watch. I want to see him succeed. And I saw that it was 2-1. I'm like, oh, he finally gave up a goal. I hadn't clued in until Sean Kelly, actually, one of our listeners, sent me a text. He's like, I can't believe it. He still hasn't given up a goal. I'm like, but he's losing 2-1. So I looked. It was an own goal. He was on the bench for an extra attacker on a delayed penalty, and Washington scored into their own net. So now I'm trying to figure out what happens if this ends 2-1. I'm looking it up. Clearly, he can't get a shutout, but does the scoreless, does his record shutout streak extend even if he can't get an individual shutout? Like, I'm looking all this up, and then he makes a Superman diving save late in the game to keep it 2-1. And I'm like, oh my God, this story keeps getting better. And then it became too good to be true. With the extra attacker out, Minnesota ties it with 25 seconds left and wins in a shootout. None of which, it may take away some of the record chasing and some of those stories, even though he set a record, but none of it devalues in any way how well Zach Fucale has played in his first 2 NHL starts after waiting all those years to get the opportunity. So just really happy for a really good guy that, if you get to know him, if you go back and search it up, look for the episode that we had him on the InGoal Radio podcast. If you listen to him and listen to a full interview, you will also be a fan of Zach Fucale.
He wouldn't have got the shutout either with the own goal.
I don't think that, right? He doesn't personally, but would his shutout streak have officially ended? That was the question. Like, he doesn't get a shutout, but does his streak continue because he hasn't been in goal? He wasn't in net for the goal.
Yes.
That's what I thought.
I don't know that for sure, but if you don't give up the goal, like, what's the difference between him or the backup or the guy in the stands? Nobody was in goal for the
That's
puck
right.
to
So
go
his
in the
shutout
net.
streak extended till that 25 seconds left goal. And folks, let me tell you, go find that late save, the diving one across. You can see him in a desperation situation. See how quickly he gets his head around, gives himself, even though it's a dive, even though it's desperation, he's got eyes on it early. Like, he prioritizes that rotation and that good vision, and he dives across glove first, and he's got eyes on it because the guy shoots it back the other way, and mid-dive, he gets the blocker up and blockers it away. Like, it is a hell of a save, and as much as it will be labeled diving desperation, there are elements to how he locates first that allow him to make what would have been a near impossible save to begin with, but he actually adjusted to make the save when the shot went somewhere else halfway. Like, it's a hell of a save. Go look it up.
He acts then he reads, then he reacts, and then he's aggressive, which is awesome to have all that and not flopping around. Like there's awareness to everything that went into the save.
And let's not forget, he also had a relief appearance the game before. So he came in and stopped all 7 shots in a game that Washington had already lost. But there was actually a sequence, I can't remember where I got to give credit, it was Goalie Guild actually. He posted a sequence behind the net, out front, left pad save, and then right into a post seal on a backdoor chance like that. Just, again, a glimpse into how well Zach Fucale is playing right now and where his game has risen to. And so nice to see him get that opportunity in the NHL. And listen, it's an opportunity that could end when everybody's off COVID protocol and everybody's healthy. And so as we start to look around, whether it's in the conversation regarding the Edmonton Oilers or other people, other teams, like, guys like Fucale and Lindgren have made the most of these small samples. Are other teams going to take note and give them an opportunity, a bigger opportunity this season, or will they have to wait till the offseason to get it?
It's an audition every time you play. For goalies like that, and everybody, but more so for goalies like Charlie and Zach. We have some great stories coming up with Mike Condon. Give us the backstory from when we last talked to him, when a lot of people last knew of him in and around the National Hockey League, to where he's going right now. It's our feature interview brought to you by Sense Arena VR.
Well, at first, let's start with Sense Arena because there's some tie-ins to this interview. You'll hear Mike Condon talk about his prized pupil, Devin Levi, at Northeastern University, using the Sense Arena as part of his warm-ups on a regular basis. And not surprised, actually, because Devin was actually introduced to Sense Arena when he was with the World Junior team in Hockey Canada at the World Juniors last year. They sent a couple of sets to Jason LaBarbera because remember, there was so much quarantine time.
Right.
Barbs recognized that this was a tool that could help his goaltender. Sense Arena wanted to give them an opportunity to try it. And I'm not surprised. Devin Levi, much like Mike Condon, is one of those no stone unturned kids. He's going to, if there's something that he thinks can help him get better, he's going to try it. And for Devin, that includes Sense Arena. Interesting to note, the school that Mike Condon is now the goalie coach at, Northeastern University, where Devin plays, also just became an official Sense Arena client this week. I saw an announcement there, and it looked like this is going to go beyond just Devin using it as a goalie and the rest of the team starting to buy in on the player side as well. So clearly they see some value there. And I would suggest that when you've got a goalie who has 8 shutouts and a .958 save percentage in 20 starts this season, and he sees value in it, it's probably not a bad thing, eh? So
hold on.
you
rattle off some numbers there. I want you to say it again and slowly for people to be able to let that sink in.
Devin Levi, who was with Canada at the World Junior Championships last year, Florida Panthers draft pick, now traded to Buffalo. This season, with Northeastern University, technically his first NCAA season because things were sort of canceled last year. 20 games, 15, 4, and 1. 958 save percentage. And he's already got 8 shutouts in 20 starts. Like mushroom clouds going off his end. Like those are like, I was going to say those are video game numbers, except in the video games, it's all about the scorers. Like those are like the goalie equivalent of video game. Those are insane.
I talked to one of his defensemen over the holidays, Tyler Spott, and he said it's just sick what he's doing. It's ridiculous. It's amazing, and he's used the term video game. It's wild how great he is.
And he uses Sense Arena. So folks, remember, the contest is still ongoing. It runs through the end of February, so from February 27th, there are skills sessions in the contest. Every week they add new components. Make sure you get in there and register. The sort of final showdown starts March 1st to March 27th. You can still get in. We've got a special week of the contest sponsored by the LA Kings coming up the end of this month, January 24th to 30th, for all Sense Arena users to get in on this contest and compete with users around the world for great prizes, including, I believe, at the end, the ultimate prize is to win a trip to the Stanley Cup playoffs in 2022. So keep building towards that, folks. And in the meantime, we just keep uncovering examples of guys using it, including, as we talked about, Mike Condon talking about Devin Levi. Last time we talked with Mike, was 2019 in the summer. He was in Kelowna trying to work his way back after some, borderline, actually debilitating injury issues with the Ottawa Senators. I'm going to let him catch us up, Darren, because he really walks us through the process of where he's been for the last couple of years and the tightrope of sort of trying to get healthy and battling that, while also battling the uncertainty of not knowing if he ever would be again. And so where that took him in terms of the last season and a bit playing wise, and ultimately led to a transition now to coaching a guy who I know, based on past conversations, is going to be really good in this role. And based on those numbers we threw out for Devin Levi, already is.
Here is Mike Condon, our feature interview brought to you by Sense Arena on InGoal Radio, the podcast. Brought to you by The Hockey Shop, source for Sports Surrey, thehockeyshop.com. Enjoy.
Really happy to welcome back to the InGoal Radio podcast, Mike Condon. Mike, you kind of disappeared on us. Last time we talked to you was August of 2019 in the summer up there in Kelowna. You were working your way through and coming off of a long laundry list of injuries, trying to get your way back. Spent the year with the Tampa organization. You're coaching now. There's a gap there that I wanted to fill in, but mostly I want to get to the transition to coaching and how exciting that is. But help us just sort of fill in that gap and that process for you, because it wasn't a simple one, was it? It wasn't one step to the other to make that decision to hang him up and make this transition.
Yeah, it was certainly, a long road in regards to trying to figure out, how to get better, what was wrong, what needed to be fixed, what needed to be addressed. And, the problem was really, I didn't really know what kind of issue I was fighting or where to start with it. I had some great people that was working with me that really wanted to help me. Adam Francilia did a great job with trying to help and everything. But I think at that point, there was too many structural issues in my frame that really didn't really have a lot of longevity in the future. That's for sure. There's certainly a lot of miles and not a lot of tread left on the tire, so to speak. So that at the end of that summer, after we talked, they went to camp, and it just, something was wrong. I didn't really know what it was, and tried my hardest to figure out what it was. All the injections and the MRIs and all that stuff, and people telling you, well, it could be this, it could be that, and there's really a lot of like chicken and the egg type thing. Like, what's causing what? Is your back causing your hip, or is your hip causing your back? And really going out and trying to figure out how to approach that was probably the hardest part, because it's a lot easier when you have like an injury and they say, oh, you have an ACL, this is what you do, this is the protocol, blah, blah, blah. Execute it, time frame, you'll be back. But mine was a little bit more complex, that really involved like many, many years of compensatory patterns. The body's so amazing. Of when you want to do a certain movement and something's hurt, the body will find a way to get you there. It may not be the most efficient, but if you have an injured area, it's going to avoid that, and you're going to use something else to compensate. So if you do that long enough, you really kind of can start to change your anatomy. And a lot of people who don't even play goalie are walking around certain ways they don't even realize. So I go to the chiropractor every morning with an old teammate that I used to play with at Princeton. He lives down the road from me, and his whole family's chiropractors. And I kind of just started approaching it that way, through the spine and everything. And, he dropped those lines on you to see where you are stability wise. And I was like walking around like this, and it's crazy, because you don't even really realize it. You just get so used to it. So I was in there in the Tampa organization in Syracuse, working with their people every morning, trying to get back. And then it got to the point where I was out, a calendar year. And I said to myself, you got to go out there. You can't be hurt forever. You got to really just try to gut through it. And I really thought that I was kind of like, one pop or crack away from being what I normally am, because that was always the recipe in the beginning. It was always like one adjustment and then, oh, okay, now I feel normal. But I never really got that, and played 5 or 6 games, and it was just, I didn't have access to my frame, didn't want to be out there, had no power, no stability, and my body was just really locked up because it didn't want to move. So I did that. went down to the Solar Bears in Orlando just to try to keep doing that. And then I took an assignment in Charlotte, and the second period of that Charlotte game, I was just like, it was probably about March 1st. I was like, this is just not working. Like, what are you doing right now? You're not helping yourself. You're definitely not helping the team. There are more important things than stopping a puck in terms of your health, and, being able to walk and sleep through the night are two pretty important things in people's lives. So I just had kind of blinders on. I wanted to fix this so badly, and I didn't really have any perspective of what was going on. So after that game in Charlotte, I told the checkers in Tampa, I was like, hey, I'm really sorry, but I can't go anymore. I got to figure this out. I got to take some time off. And I really appreciate the opportunities, and went home on like March 10th. And I think the season was canceled on March 15th or something like that. So you go from there and you're trying to like, okay, how am I going to approach this rehab? And then boom, the pandemic hits, and it's, you can't really go anywhere. I can't see anybody and specialists or anything like that. So I kind of saw that as a silver lining, hey, maybe take some time off, get away from the game. You can't go to rehab, you might as well just kind of do your own thing. And even throughout that whole summer, I still tried to skate, and it wasn't getting better. The pain was getting worse. So that's kind of when I knew things weren't good. And my agent called me and said, you have some taxi squad opportunities if you're interested. And I was like sitting in my car, and I was like looking in the mirror literally. And I was like, could you have a chance to stop Connor McDavid on a breakaway right now? And the answer to that was absolutely not. So I had a little chance when I was playing anyways. So it was just, it's just like, what are you doing? Like, if you can't go out there and have a chance to actually get better or be your best, then I think it's time to really, take some perspective, be grateful for the time that you played. I mean, I had surgery in college in 2011. So I got 8 years after that. And I know a lot of guys who have that surgery at a young age who never really even get a couple of years after that. So I'm not upset or anything. It was, I'm very grateful for all the time that I had, but sometimes you don't really possess the anatomy or the anatomy to play this position. Because I look at guys like Vasilevsky when I was in Tampa, like he would just be sitting there in the gym in the full splits, dorsiflexion with his feet full out, just sitting there on his phone, just breathing and relaxed. And I'm like, I could barely touch my toes. I've been working on splits my whole life, and I never been able to get it. So he's got the Slavic hips. I got the Scottish hips. So there's a big difference there.
What, I want to get into the lessons from that, because now that you're coaching, it sounds like you've applied some of the lessons in terms of, not beyond just not pushing through it, but how you train. But at first I wanted to ask, because when you talked about the uncertainty of not knowing, and then going from that as a player in your career and then right into the pandemic, I think there's probably a lot of young goalies out there right now that are struggling mentally with the uncertainty of not knowing, especially in places where their leagues have been shut down. And like for a lot of us, I think, just like the future in general, I cover the Canucks. The next game just got canceled. Like there's this uncertainty. I'm not asking you to play, well, I am, I guess, play psychologist for me. Like, what are there lessons from managing that you can apply to, everyday life right now?
It's unbelievably difficult. I thought about the guys in like college and in major junior who were about to enter their first pro year and like sign those ATOs and those PTOs at the end of their season and go and play in like in the Coast or the A and like really make a name for yourself, because that's what I was able to do. And I think about all those guys who just didn't have that opportunity. And it's kind of like, it's heartbreaking that they can't even go and pursue that. And I was speaking with other goalies in my local area, Boston, who are, they don't know, they can't find teams. They find a team in Canada, then they can't get across the border. They're stuck in Canada, or they can't get in. They're up, they're down. They're just trying to find a place to play. And it's, even in the Coast right now in pros, I think like how many non like AHL or NHL contract goalies are on East Coast teams, like 5 or 6. And it didn't always used to be like that. There was a lot of free agent guys who were playing at that level, and it's kind of tough. There's certainly a backlog there. So in terms of psychology approaching that, I don't really know. It's just, where are you right now? What can you do right now? so much of goaltending is what can you control, right? So I think if you apply a lot of the things we do in games, it's like, what can you control? What can you do right now? What is a good way to push you forward rather than having maybe negative mental thoughts that keep you where you are, or push you back? It's always just about trying to get like 1%. Like, where can I get this 1%? Can I find a team? Can I go play? No. Okay. Can I go skate with my goalie coach? Can I do these things that kind of sort of give me a little momentum to keep me in the fight? I think that's really the best way to go about it, and keep networking, keep calling, and never really give up the fight, never give up on a save, never give up on, your dreams either in terms of what you want to do. And that's I have a lot of empathy for guys out there right now.
Okay, switching back to the physical side, and again, this transformation from Mike Condon, the goalie, to Mike Condon, the coach, working at Northeastern now. One of your pupils is tearing it up, and a guy we've had on the podcast before and are big fans of in Devin Levi. How does the advice change, especially from the physical aspect? When you were talking about, your everything being tilted as you walk down the street, I immediately went back to a recent conversation we had on the podcast with Ryan Miller about how every summer he would have to sort of go and try and reset his body, or now that he's retired, train to be a human instead of training to be a goalie. How, when you're still being a goalie, have you found differences and help your younger guys you're working with walk that balance?
Yeah, I learned a lot about anatomy when I had problems, not before I had problems. So I was definitely, attacking it from a disadvantage point. So I just kind of try to give them concepts and let them figure it out. I mean, goaltending is an asymmetrical position, right? You have one hand that's closed holding a weight, and then you have another hand that's open that's kind of flexing the other way. So when you're holding a weight, we all kind of have that tendency to do this. So like we get tight down here, and then we all kind of pull to our blocker side. And especially when you're talking about RVH on the blocker side and the ankle, like I talk to a lot of guys, I'm like, well, if you're like a normal full, is it full left? What's a normal goalie? Full left or full right?
We just call we call them normal. The other guys are full rights, and we just say normal.
I don't want to disparage anybody, but normal. Normal goalies always have problems on their right ankle. And I think that a lot of that is going into the RVH on the blocker side. If you do the paddle, you're really torquing over your right ankle more than you are on your left, because you don't actually have to go over as much. So my first injuries that I had were with my feet and my ankles doing so many RVH, so many reps, because I couldn't feel good unless I did like reps, feel, like muscle memory. And that is not that movement you really want to put yourself a pitch count on. So the way I kind of approach it now is I just tell concepts like, hey, like we spend so much time like this forward, crunch forward, we don't really do that in goalie skates. Like you get enough of that in practice. We spend the first 10, 15 minutes doing the opposite. We want to get big and we want to retract and we want to get open and really kind of open that up. And we do a lot of movements that you don't do on the ice, like one-legged toe touches as we're skating forward, as we're skating backwards. We really want to feel ourselves on the ice, weird edge work. A lot of stuff that Adam Francilia really introduced me to. Stuff that gets you out of normal goalie position and just really helps you be an athlete in goalie gear. And I think, you don't need to spend so much time doing T pushes and butterfly slides and butterfly pushes. You get those in your practice reps. Like pre-practice should just be about activating, having your body feel comfortable where you are on the ice. And that's just really about throwing different things at it, so you don't get really stuck on the train tracks of goalie position. Because if you're there the whole time, you're going to get compensation patterns, you're going to get rigid, you're not going to be fluid. And it's really just about telling them that like everything's connected, and you go to stuff with Lyle Mass too, especially with our head and our neck. Like I always kind of played like this with my head forward and like pinching off this area, but he was the one who told me, all your eye muscles are behind your head. Instead of going like this, we should really be kind of tucking our chin and pulling it back, relieving all the tension in our eyes, getting almost away from the puck, getting more peripheral. And that was kind of really hard for me to conceptualize. But for some reason, my hands always went to the puck more when I tucked my chin. It's almost like I always wanted to stick my face in the puck, but he was like, no, you want to tuck your chin and kind of pull back a little bit, so you see more. there's no more tension in the back of your neck. It's more in your core, and your paraspinals running up and down your back. And it really just lets your central nervous system and your eyes relax so that your eyes can actually track things. So it's little stuff like that. Like we want to do the reverse of what we're doing in practice. We want to pay attention to our eyes, our head, our neck, how we're seeing things. And a lot of time with the feet too, warming up the feet and just knowing that like we feel the ice in our skates and everything through our feet and all the nerves. And I mean, the reflexology, right? Like I bought a pair of shoes the other day that had like all the organs represented on your foot. And it's like, in Eastern cultures, they approach health through the feet. They start with, reflexology, all the acupuncture in the feet to cure ailments and organs in the body. So I think you got to get outside the box and how you approach your anatomy and how you want to train. And we've been doing that, and it's been a little eye-opening for them. It's a little weird when you're doing, it's like one-legged toe touches and airplanes on your skates, but it's just about, working on that stability in those areas and being an athlete in goalie gear.
Okay, so having had conversations, or at least one or two in the past with Devin, and having just enjoyed that answer there, I'm guessing the two of you are probably having some pretty fun conversations back and forth about goaltending both inside and outside of the box. Because I know he's a guy that, much like you in your career, like I always viewed you as a no stone unturned guy, right? If there was a chance to find an advantage or a way to get better, from mixed martial arts training, I remember at one point when you were with the Canadians, you were looking for it. I'm guessing those are fascinating conversations, but at the same time, one of the lessons I know that you learned over the course of your career is sometimes you can chase too much and chase too many different changes. So, and Devin's a guy who probably can do a lot of extra work. So how are you two finding that balance? What are those conversations like? This is a big open-ended question, but like, what's that relationship like, and how are you helping him find that balance that you worked at throughout your career? Or maybe you would change how you worked at it now.
Like I remember the first day I walked into the rink, I'm like, yeah, where's Dev at? And they're like, oh, he's out like outside in the pavement in his gear taking shots because we couldn't go on the ice yet. So he was like in his full goalie gear, no skates on, having someone shoot at him. Like another day I'll walk in and he's got the Oculus Rift on and he's making saves with the VR on. And, he's talking to his sports psych guy. He's talking to people in the Buffalo organization. He's talking to me. He's talking to his agent. He's talking to all these people. Not to mention the fact that he's a computer science major, which at most schools, especially at Northeastern, is not an easy degree to get and you can't really fake your way through that, because the code tells the truth and you cannot copy code. So he's a very bright person. He's so curious. He thinks about the game differently than I do. Like he'll say things like, I want to be over my hips. I want to be over the puck. And that's something that I never really thought of. He's really about just like being over himself, being over his hips. And he thinks about it that way. But, we had a conversation at the start of the year with all three of our goalies, and we're just like, this is how we're going to approach things. My job is not to put more things in your head. My job is to take things out of your head. Because I felt like, I don't want to sound like one of those guys back when I played, but back when I played, it was I kept on putting things on my list, and I was never really taking things off my list. The list of concerns or things I wanted to work on. And before you know it, that list gets pretty long, and that can kind of have a negative mental connotation of like, I got to do all this stuff. These are all my deficiencies. And I had a lot of great goalie coaches, but no one over time who could tell me to take things off that list. So I'm just trying to take things out of his head. I'm like, hey, this is what we're going to do. And like, say we have an issue in the blocker. We don't really say like, oh, we have an issue in the blocker. We're just going to do 100 blocker shots or like 50 or whatever, just nice and easy. And you're going to feel it. And you're just going to let your body talk to you and talk through it. We're not going to put a name to the problem. It's just like, I'm having trouble on my stick or my blocker. It's like, all right, well, I'm going to get 100 pucks. You're just going to stay there and not move, really easy on the body. And we're just going to feel it out. Just feel it. And they're like, you feel better? Yeah, I feel better. Okay, then we go from there. So we came up with a plan. It was just like, Monday, like college is weird. It's Friday, Saturday, right? So it's just like, hey, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we can think about technique, what we want to do. We're going to go into practice with intention. Like, hey, I really want to be dropping late on shots. I really want to be working on having aggressive hands. I want to be set and square, different intentions. Usually you want to practice because it's hard to do more than one. Pick an intention for that skate execute it for that day. But come, Wednesday and Thursday practices, we're not thinking anymore. We're playing hockey. We're playing street hockey. This is an outdoor rink. We're competing, and we're not thinking about our technique anymore, because come Friday night, you can't think about your technique and you can't turn that mental switch on and off. So Monday, Tuesday, I'll talk to you. Like, what do you think you want to do? What do you want to work on? Where do you not feel comfortable? Come up with a few drills for that, because we only get about 20, 30 minutes before practice. We'll attack those on Monday and Tuesday, really talk it out. How do we feel? What do we like about this technique? But come Wednesday and Thursday, it's like, I'm not saying anything about what you're doing with your hands. I'll say stuff maybe about like, hey, like need a little bit more jam today, maybe need a little bit more fire, like there's how do you want to feel Friday night? You have 48 hours to really earn that, because you earn that feeling way before you step on the ice on Friday. Every start of the week on Monday, I'm like, how do you want to feel on Friday night? What kind of investment, what kind of equity do you want to put into that game? Because you have 4 days, 4 opportunities to do that. And mentally that feels really good. And then Dev and I often use, academic examples. It's like, if you have, 50 vocab words to learn on a test on Friday, you come up with a plan. I'm going to learn 10 words every day for those 5 days. It's an easy way to do it. I know I can do it. It's not going to take a ton of time or a ton of effort. I'm just going to execute that plan. And come Friday, when I come into that test, I know those 50 words. And then you just got to show up, and it's just like, did I prepare the best I could? Yeah. All right. Is there anything else more I got to do? No. All right. Well, let's just go out there and have fun. So it's really just about, taking things off of them, let them just be themselves, feel it, breathe through it. And it's been working so far with all 3 of us. Evan, Fear, and TJ Sempton there. We've been having a good time, and I think Devin's having a really happy and healthy year. So it's been it was a long answer, but it's been really good.
I was going to ask you how much of this job is technical and how much of it is psychological, but you kind of answered that right there. Like a large part of it is knowing when to do what. So I guess my follow-up question would be, where does video fit in that? Like, where does game prep and pre-scout type stuff fit in that? If you're preparing for the test after Tuesday, Wednesday, and you don't, like, can you think about the opponent without overthinking it? How do you find that balance? How much work do you guys do on that? Again, without giving too much away about your preparations or
he does a lot of it on his own. Actually, I'll just tell him, because like that Instat app is unbelievable for guys to be able to get video and clips and data of another team, but of themselves as well. So I'll say, like, night before a game, go and watch your best saves. They have that like big super save breakdown on that website. So I don't have to do any clipping for him. He has a password to go, hey, tonight, go watch your big saves. Just watch them on repeat, watch them on a loop. Get that in your brain the night before you fall asleep, feeling good about what you've done in the past. Film will probably watch both games on Monday early as possible, because we want to flush it, good or bad, as soon as possible. If I could do it on Sunday, I would, but I'm like, hey, Sunday is your day. You don't do anything. You don't come to the rink. You don't think about hockey unless you have to get treatment. That's your day. You have to get away from the game. You have to miss it. You have to, get a hunger for going back to the rink. And that's Sunday's your day. So we got every day planned out in terms of that. But if there's, a certain tendency that a team has, we'll talk about that. Whether, a certain player who has a crazy move, I found out about the Spezza fake slap shot the hard way. I forget where we were. I forget, we were in Dallas, and he wound up, and I'm like, okay, here we go. I came flying out, and he stopped it, and he's still moving, and I'm like, oh no, and I just shot it, missed it, goal. Somebody in the locker room came up to me afterwards, like, yo, you didn't know he did that? And I was like, no, I didn't. I didn't know he did that. So if there's something glaring like that, I'll be like, hey, this guy does this, watch out. Or if there's a really tall guy who's a net front guy who they always plant in front of the net, hey, be aware of that. So we'll work on screens a little bit more. And the only other film that we really watched in that is just power play tendencies. Get the spots where you need to be, where they like to work in your head before it happens, so that when you go into your RVH, when you're following a pass and the pass is going this way, you know exactly who's there, you know exactly whose shot he is. So that's just taking more things out of their head that they have to worry about. So he's very analytical. He does a lot of stuff, and a lot of it is telling them, like, hey, that's enough. You're a college student. You have an academic life, you have an athletic life, and you have a social life. And if you put all your eggs in one basket, you are not the best version of yourself. You got to have fun. This is a great time to be, at an unbelievable school in Boston, playing, BCBU and the Beanpot, Harvard. It's a great campus, and you got to enjoy that, and you got to have perspective, because you only have so much time here. So it's just about, like, a lot of times I'm like, get off the ice, get off the ice, man. He's like, well, we could do a couple more. I'm like, no, you did enough. You did enough. Get off, because it's really just about, you want to feel good physically and mentally on Friday. And that doesn't mean that going out on Thursday and killing yourself in practice is going to help you. I did that a lot. I never really took pregame skates off. I never really took the option, because I was still kind of stuck in the mentality of like, hey, you're undrafted, hey, you can't rest on your laurels. You always got to prove it every day. And that's true to a certain extent, but there is such thing as the law of diminishing returns. And I learned that the hard way. So I'm just trying to tell them, like, the college practices are long too. They're like, hour and a half. Sometimes you'll get an ice cut in between. Those are never the fun practices when you got to cut the ice in between. But hey, this is a long year. It's a lot of practice, because you're only playing 2 games a week. So you're on the ice for like 8 hours, Monday through Thursday. So it's like, we got to be smart. We're kind of on a butterfly count, so it's just like, I got to watch that and make sure he's not doing too much, because it's pretty easy to get worn down, especially when, the sun's going down at 4 p.m. You're not getting a lot of sun. You're in study halls. There's a lot of things that when you're 18, 19, 20, your body can probably adapt to, but it's about getting good habits now, because when you're 25, 26, 27, like, those little things have a much bigger effect on your body.
You mentioned it. Do you use a butterfly count? Because I know it's something that, Brian DeCord's somebody that you've worked with there at Stop It Goaltending coming up. It's something he's talked about in the past. Like, are we as firm as, maybe not like a pitch count, like right on this number, but is that, as a guy who had both hips operated on while you were still in college, is that something you're cognizant of? And are there ways to still practice without necessarily adding that up and down burden?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I already spoke about the RVH. I think, max a practice in goalie skate, because you're going to do some in practice. So when we're skating, I don't think more than 6 to 8 on each leg. I don't really do more than that. That's enough to get the feel and get the proprioception of where you want to be, like good landings, whether you're doing boot lock, skate on, or toe landing. You just got to feel that, so your body knows where you're going. I think 6 to 8 is kind of max, because you're probably going to do like 20 or 30 more in the skate. So you're looking at like 50 RVHs, 60 RVHs in a practice. That's a lot. That's a tough movement on the ankle, knee, hip chain. So you got to watch that. In the old days, we would skate the zone, butterfly drop, butterfly shuffle up, butterfly push up, the whole zone each way, one way. That's a lot of miles. So we don't really do anything like that. Like I said earlier, we have kind of like an athlete goalie warm up that we do for 15, 20. Then we'll get the hands going, do some edge work around the pucks, a lot of handles. Because I think, when you're doing a handle, you're doing a lot of different stuff. Like you're getting out on your outside edge, you may be doing a crossover, you're stopping, you're turning your head, and then you're using your core to really rip the puck around the boards. I think that's a good way to activate and get you comfortable on the ice. Then we'll get into like really simple feel-good shots, alternating glove blocker. And then we'll do one simple, just like slap shot from the top of the blue, track it, sticker, puck on pad, follow it, snap it back to me. We'll do like 6 or 8 of those. And that's just everything you need to do to turn the engine on. The actual like butterflies and butterfly pushes, like you're getting that in practice. So I don't really, if it's been like a long time, maybe like we're coming out of break right now. So like the first couple skates, take them out in the neutral zone where there's no posts, where they have plenty of space. And it's like, hey, we're going 30% here. We're working on good plants when we're pushing. We're working on turning our head first, finding where we're going. And I only want to see 20 or 30%. Big, long pushes so that you feel comfortable. There's nothing in your way that you have to worry about. And it's just more of just a stretch so that your body doesn't feel tight, or, you're going to go flying in the post and hurt yourself.
I was going to say, by the time they're at the level you've got them at, they know how to drop into a butterfly. So doing another 30 of them before they even stop a puck along the blue line, probably not doing a whole lot of good, is it?
No, it's everyone at this stage really, like, you know how to butterfly push, you know how to T-push, you know how to do all those things. It's a matter of just keeping that maintained and not over influencing it.
And is the reality of the maintenance on, if there are flaws in, because there are, like, there's new philosophies, you were introduced to some of them later in your career in terms of, you know, how you initiate, what part of your body initiates a drop. Those are details you would work on at a different time, not so much in a warm-up tight skate where everybody's just going through it fast to get the body loose anyway.
Yeah, it's almost like you go to the chop shop in the summer and you take a look at the alignment, you take a look at, you know, how you're approaching saves. That's like a June, July, August type thing. At this stage in January, like, you know, I'll see something, I'm like, hey, like, we're not going to address that right now. We're aware of it, but it's gotten you to here. We're going to keep using it, because if we're going to make any drastic changes, that's going to screw up your timing or anything like that. So if you're looking to make changes in the way you approach or you make saves, there's things you do in the summer and then there's things you do in the year. So in the year you maintain, you know, judge, you do reps, you do feel. In the summer, you can kind of go back and look at film right at the end of the season and be like, okay, what do I want to do? What time do I have? Come up with a schedule, execute the plan, and you'll feel a lot better going into the season.
You are one of our favorite Pro Read guests from our audience for your breakdowns of saves you made over your career, and the way you shared some of the details, hand position, all the things that you picked up out there to read the game. Is that something, I'm just out of curiosity, because that's obviously what we try and do, is share those details with pro reads. Is that something you think can be taught? I mean, maybe even more so at a young age than guys like Devin, and once you've hit this stage, or are you still teaching those elements too? Or is it a matter of sort of letting them discover it through video before or after and sort of figure it out on their own?
Yeah, I mean, I would always talk to Craig Anderson, because he was so intuitive about feet, hands, head, and eyes. And I'm like, you're analyzing all that before a shot. And, you know, he had some, like, I don't want to give away his secrets, but he would do some weird things on breakaways that I wouldn't even think of, you know, like the way he would go about, like, what the guy, like how he would read the guys doing. And like, he would like stand up on so many shots, and like guys in practice would get mad because they're like, oh, he's not going down, he's not trying. And I'm just like, well, maybe he knows where you're shooting. You know, maybe he's played the game that long that he knows, you know, he's seen that so many times. And I never really was good at reading where guys were going. I was never really a good tracker. And the way I made up for that is I put my hands out really big, because like I look at Tuukka and I see his hand just like right here, just like kind of right off his body, but he goes and gets the puck no matter what. I'm like, how does a guy do that? So we're all kind of different in that sense. I think, to your point, it's really just about introducing the concepts. You know, it was like, where was his elbow on that shot? Was it glued to his body or was it off his body? You know, if a guy's arm is glued to his body, there's only really one way he can go, and that's across it. If his arm's off his body, he can pull, he can push, he can drag. You know, you look at guys like Nylander and Matthews, when they're shooting, their hands are so far off their body that they can drag it and push it back to where they dragged it from, or they can pull it and they really disguise where they're going. And they have such flex on their sticks that by the time that stick actually kicks through, the puck is gone like a third of the way, and it's already at you. So little concepts like that, and kind of let them figure it out, because I don't really have the key to understanding. It's very much like intellectual and intuitive. It's just about introducing concepts. The one thing I do say is like blades are easy. You know, like when I wanted to kind of hypnotize myself during a game and I was having bad mental chatter, I would just be like, I would always say which shot the guy was when they were passing it. I'd be like, righty, lefty, righty, lefty, lefty, righty. And that was my way of just like getting out of my own head. And I was tracking and I was paying attention, because blades really dictate like a large part of how you go about where you are in the crease, especially on dead angles and things like that. You can save yourself a lot of headaches just by paying attention to blades, especially on power play and what guys like to do. Penalty kill power play, what guys like to do. So Dev is very intuitive when it comes to, like, he'll always tell me like he was going glove, you know, all the way. And I'm just like, oh, okay. But it's tough though when guys miss their shots or like they duff it and they're going one leg up and it goes 5-0. Like sometimes I have some answers from the coaching staff, but I'm just like, hey, he missed a shot. That's like they read so well that if when a guy misses a shot and does something that he didn't even mean to do, it kind of screws him up. But that just tells me that a guy is really tracking and really in tune with where the shooter wants to go and absorbing all that material. Because a lot of times, like you don't even really see the puck. You don't really even track. Like people always say tracking the puck and seeing it, but a lot of the times the save is made before the shot even comes based off what you interpreted, because they shoot so fast that you got half a second. There's not many guys who can, especially when you're below the dots or like just in below the circles, like half a second is not that much time to really analyze where they're going, fire that motor neuron to where you want to go. Like I'm pretty sure the reaction is slower than the action.
So just so you know, for the record, that's my excuse in beer league. They're all missing their shot. Like that's the problem. These guys suck. They're missing their shot, and I look worse than I am. That's the excuse, and I'm sticking to it. Hey, I had one last question for you, and it was just going to be, what do you love about coaching, and do you know yet whether this is the future for you? I think what you love about coaching has already come through in all your answers. Just the way you get to think about the game. What do you think? Is this still something you're just trying to see where the path takes you, or have you had those thoughts yet? You're just trying to enjoy the moment for now.
Yeah, I don't really know what I want to do. One of the hardest parts of hockey life is the insecurity of where you're going to be in the future. You got to chase opportunities. You got to move around. You got to do planes, trains, automobiles. When you have a family, you got 2 dogs. It's like I lived that life a long time, and one of the parts I didn't like about it was like I never really knew where I was going to be. So when you do that for like 20 years, I always moved around growing up, and chasing that dream is fun, and you do it while you can. If you have the energy, that's great. But one of the hard parts about it is the travel and the insecurity. You got 1 year, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 or 4 if you're lucky. And, right now I kind of want to set some roots up. I had a lot of planes, trains, and automobiles, so I kind of want to stay here for a bit. The good thing about that is there's a lot of hockey in Boston, which is nice. And there's a ton of schools, and I'm very happy at Northeastern. I'm very happy with coaching. I really like going to the rink, and it's that much better when you don't have an hour and a half warm up to do, where you can just roll up and get a crappy cup of coffee and just sit there and watch all the guys, doing squats and riding the bike. And you're like, yeah, I don't have to do any of that, because I would get to the rink, 3 hours before, 2 hours before practice, 2.5 hours just to like turn the machine on just for a practice, never mind a game. Game was like 3 hours. It was a lot. So I love going to the rink. I love being around, like-minded people who love the game. And, I feel confident going to the rink and sharing what I've learned, because I have a unique experience. And I think that really helps me mentally, because I don't really feel like a fraud in that sense, because I'm just like, I did it. And that's really good for yourself, that you don't feel like an imposter, where you can actually, you're confident in the information that you're giving someone can actually help them. And I know how difficult this journey is for so many people. It was incredibly difficult for me, but also amazingly rewarding. It made me who I am. I think it's one of the hardest things to do, to go out there every single night. Like even when Northeastern scores on the other guy, I'm like, I still feel bad for him. I went to a Red Sox game the other night, like in the summer, and I saw one pitcher get yanked in the first, and I was like sick to my stomach. I was like, I feel you, man. Like there's an appreciation of what athletes do and what they endure and what they experience. And I think I have a unique experience, and I want to share that, my mistakes, how I felt, and kind of just let them know that, like, everything that you've thought or felt, I was able to feel that and experience that too. And you're not alone, and we'll get through this. And the whole point of this game is to enjoy it and to be happy. And sometimes, whether it's our fault or not, sometimes we get off that track a little bit. And it's just a matter of telling guys, like, it's okay to get off the tracks for, a quarter mile, half mile, but, we got to find a way to get back on it and enjoy it and get back to what this actually is and why we started doing it. So I really enjoy that. And if I've learned anything through my career, if you work hard, you do your best, you be a good person, you can't really fail. So everything's still kind of up in limbo. I haven't gotten a paycheck out of this. So, maybe hopefully one day that will come, but I'm just happy to be sharing my experiences and working with guys who want to work too. So that's fun.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, because the game's better with Mike Condon in it, and especially when you're as gracious about sharing those experiences, not just with your pupils at Northeastern, but with the rest of us. I've always appreciated it, whether I'm writing for NHL and all those great stories over the years and the insights you would share there, or here at InGoalMag.com and the InGoal Radio podcast. Mike, man, can't thank you enough. I hope this is the first of many conversations with Mike Condon, the goalie coach, and I enjoyed it.
A weekly segment going or something.
Love it. I love the idea. Now you got to get going, because I'm holding you up for a game, buddy. So thank you so much for this.
Good seeing you, Woody.
Who hasn't been there? Whatever moment of your life, career, whatever, where you're sitting there and you have that self-talk, and Mike Condon says to Mike Condon, "Could I stop Connor McDavid right now?" My immediate reaction was, who can stop Connor McDavid at any time? And then he laughs about that. But what an honest moment that was.
Yeah, and as you could hear, the uncertainty of diagnosis for him too provided a lot of mental challenges. And I thought it was interesting to hear him talk about, there are some comparisons. We're all sort of experiencing a lot of uncertainty right now, right? Schedules, and when are we getting back to normal? And that can be a really tough thing to deal with mentally. And I just think, as hard as it was for Mike to get through that, obviously he's come out on the other side of it, and it's just one more sort of really important real world experience that he adds to his resume as he transfers over to coaching, that he's able to relate to a young goaltender on yet another level. You know what I mean? It's just another experience where he can say, you know what? I've been there, man. I've done that. And here's how I managed it.
What kind of goalie coach do you think he'll be?
An excellent one. And obviously, okay, I'm biased. I'm a big Mike Condon fan.
I was more thinking technically in his approach, but excellent works.
Well, I mean, I think that's, I wondered how much of, and the question was one of my first questions I was going to ask, but he sort of answered it in an earlier answer, was, how much of the new job is mental, how much of it is technical. And his ability to compartmentalize, at least at the NCAA level, where games are spread out and you've got a week to sort of divide up how you focus your time. He's still paying attention to the technical, but he wants his guys to feel like all that work's done by the time they head to the weekend.
Yeah.
He doesn't want them. And so again, I think what made Mike really enjoyable to talk to, and I think allowed him to have success that nobody would have forecast for him coming out of Princeton, right? Go back and listen to that first interview. His path to pro was as difficult and unlikely at times as any have been. This is a guy who was talking about, articling and looking for careers outside of hockey towards the end of his university career. And next thing you know, he's in the National Hockey League. Part of it was that work ethic he talked about, but he also now knows that there are times now as a coach where he can say, quite honestly, that warrior mentality can be too much, right? He always looked for new ways to get better. Last time we talked to him, where was he? He was up in Kelowna. He was learning new biomechanics of movement. He was learning new techniques. He talked about working with Anna Francilia and Lyle Mass, sort of, new tracking mechanics that changed how you, not just tracking as look at the puck, but how you looked at the puck affects how your body moved. He was looking for new solutions. And yet I think when you hear him talk about coaching younger goalies, he's not trying to jam any of those into how they do things. He's introducing philosophies, letting them find their way. He recognizes the importance of the work, and he's sort of I say this with the utmost respect, a goalie geek, and that he'll always look for new solutions and what's next. But also at the same time recognizes that chasing change probably isn't a good thing, that sometimes too much work can become a negative. I just think his ability to walk through all those different challenges and maybe at times discover answers after the fact, after his career ended, makes him so much better suited to now help others navigate their career, even if he didn't always find the answers he was looking for when he needed them.
Was Mike not the player who got the PTO or the opportunity to go skate with the Ontario Reign. And at first blush, we thought that it was Ontario, Canada. And along that reign, was it not that? I think it was. And
I want to say you're right. Now I'm Googling Hockey DB to see if that matches, but there were so many tryouts early on for him. And I think he did admit that, despite being a Princeton grad, that
but there was a few people.
There was a period where I used to think that too. Like, by the way, full admission, I always thought the Ontario Reign were in Ontario, Canada.
You want to go skating for Ontario? Sure, it's just over there, and
it's California.
It's California.
And I remember, and don't forget, like Mike's college career may have ended in terms of playing, but he was still studying. Like Mike was preparing for finals on bus rides with these minor league teams, sort of chasing the dream, and a dream that he wasn't sure would get to continue. And like we said, it's not, I think I said next day, he's playing for the Montreal Canadiens. Like there's a lot of work that went into it. It wasn't lucky by any means, but the work he did and the effort he put in and the willingness to sort of sacrifice got him the opportunities. And when he had the opportunity, he made the most of it.
You would not do yourself any disservice if you went back and made this a Mike Condon double episode and listened to the first go around of him joining us on InGoal Radio, the podcast, because that conversation and the balancing of everything that he did and his journey to get to the National Hockey League was exemplary. And now it's sort of the post.
And I managed to Google fast enough to give you the answer, Darren. You're right. So I'm pretty sure it was Mike that told us that story. 2012, 2013, Ontario Reign. So it would have been 2013, end of their season. He played 4 games, posted a .943. But don't forget, the Ontario Reign at the time were not an American Hockey League franchise. They were an East Coast. That was his ECHL opportunity. And then from there, in the same season, he ended up getting an opportunity to go play 5 games with the Houston Aeros in the American League, posted a .919. That led to the invite to Hamilton the following season. I can't remember the goalie coach that saw him, that's part of the Canadiens organization, that saw him in the playoffs with Houston and gave him the chance with Hamilton. And within a year, he's playing for the Montreal Canadiens, a year and a half.
Crazy. It's awesome. And again, listen to both conversations because they're outstanding. We'll put it in the show notes. It's right there. Look down at it, and you can catch up with Mike Condon. He's just so honest and so forthcoming with every aspect of life and goaltending that it's brilliant. And you could do a lot worse than listening to a lot of Mike Condon. What's going on over at InGoal?
We got some fresh. Speaking of the Ontario Reign, put up a fresh drill with Matt Villalta. So that's up online right now. A little one-timer action. And I know there are probably some goalie coaches that are going to see Matt having a little fun ripping 1Ts off the bar and think, what's the point? It's not the right type. We've heard this before from some, like when guys are practicing shooting at the empty net. This isn't what she should be working on. But there's a very good reason that he works on these. It is fun. And as Marc-Andre Fleury will be the first to tell us, fun matters. If it matters to a guy who's got a Hall of Fame career, 502 NHL wins later, it can matter. It matters to Matt, matters to Garrett Sparks, matters to Matt Millar, the goalie coach in the Ontario Reign. But while they're having fun, there's a very specific skill that they're working on in terms of one-touching pucks and being able to help their team transition, and they get it out of these one-timer drills. So that's up online right now. Fresh pro reads. Curtis McElhenney was the latest one, but I did a long Zoom session with Frederick Anderson this week. So he's back in pro reads starting maybe by the time people listen to this, shortly after it goes up, we'll have this fresh pro reads. We'll have Frederick Anderson with the Carolina Hurricanes. Hoping to add a few more names. I might tempt fate and see if Henrik will do a couple when we get him on the podcast. So lots going on at InGoalMag.com for our InGoal Premium membership. And lots more coming up over the next couple of weeks. We got a whole bunch of drills that we're ready to roll out moving forward here.
Reminder, the plan is to connect with the King over the next couple of weeks and bring you a special conversation with Henrik Lundqvist. Thanks to Mike Condon for joining us, and go and enjoy the Hockey Shop, source for sports story, thehockeyshop.com. Big sale on all the V1 sticks with Warrior. And then you can get into Sense Arena VR. The contest continues there. Really appreciate their support and continued listenership from you as you explore this journey of goaltending on InGoal Radio, the podcast.